So I'm here with Pedro. I'm going to ask him to introduce himself to us shortly. And we're here to just talk about the journey of a black man into therapy. So Pedro, good to see you. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you, Trevor. Good to see you too.
Brilliant, great. So just to start off with, could you just introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Pedro. Um, I work as a psychotherapist with City and Hackney Mind. And I've been doing so for about nearly 4 years. And I work full time in the organization, and I offer both one-to-one, individual, and group interventions. So that's what I do. That's my sort of my main sort of profession, occupation, and I've been living in London for nearly 18 years. 18
Wow,
years I've been,
okay.
and
And where are you
originally,
originally from then, Pedro?
I was born I was born in Angola, Southwest Africa. Um,
Wow, that's nice.
and I've lived in Portugal and I've lived in South Africa. Um, and in different periods I've lived in Angola, like from when I was born until I was about 6, and then I came back. So in total I've left Angola 3 times. Um,
Wow,
yeah,
okay.
so
Bit
and
of a
yeah,
traveled man.
and yes,
Excellent.
yes, been moving around a bit, and but most of my adult life has been in London since
Okay,
2004. Yeah.
that's great. All right, thank you for that. And how long have you been working in as a therapist?
Uh, 4 years. 4 years.
Okay.
So my job at Mind is my first paid um, job as a therapist. I did placements before in different services,
Okay.
mostly in East London, Newham, Tower Hamlets, Hackney. But as you may be aware, these placements were unpaid. So that's when I was accruing and obtaining my hours that I needed for my qualification. And after I obtained those hours, my first paid job has been this one with City and Hackney Mind. So it's going to be 4 years in May, actually.
Okay. Wow, that's fascinating. That's brilliant. And congratulations, obviously.
Thank you, thank
All
you.
right. And what was the motivation for entering this profession?
Um, that's a long story.
Okay.
That's a long story.
We'll
I'll
take
try.
the abridged version.
I'll try to be brief. Yeah, it's so when I left school, when I left secondary school, when I finished secondary school, I was in South Africa. I was a bit unsure about what to pursue at university, and I had different sort of interests, literature, philosophy, politics, psychology.
Mm.
But I was 17 years old. I was a bit confused, so I went to do what a lot of my peers were doing. So I went to study business
Okay.
and marketing.
Yeah.
Um,
Common
and
route.
I went to do a
Yeah.
lot of my peers were doing that. I said, okay,
Yeah,
I'm gonna
absolutely.
go and study that. It wasn't a very well sort of thought out and reflected sort of choice.
Yeah.
I went, and there were so many other factors involved in that choice. Um, but I dropped out after a year because I wasn't enjoying it.
Yeah.
But what was interesting is I had a lecturer, one of the tutors in that program was a psychologist.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed these lectures,
Yeah.
and these lessons, and just the way he delivered them. And he would talk about psychology at times because it was
Yes.
part of a module on a marketing module on consumer behavior. So he would talk about different aspects of psychology and behavior. And I was quite inspired by him as a person, this tutor, and the
Right.
way he
Okay.
delivered, the way he communicated, his
Sure.
posture, the way he carried himself. And I was like, wow. And then he told us a bit about himself, that he worked as a psychologist as well, in addition to being a tutor. So I said, yeah, that sounds like what I would like to do. So I dropped out and I went to study psychology. So I did my undergraduate training in South Africa at University of South Africa. And when I finished that degree, that's when I came to London and I did my postgraduate training here. So so what motivated me to become a therapist. First was having the experience of having that tutor, was quite inspired by him. And also having starting to read more about psychology and psychotherapy, I felt that as a profession, it's a profession that can do quite a lot to support and facilitate people's development and change and transformations.
Yeah.
And obviously, I was always very passionate about that, about how people grow, how people change, and not just people in isolation, how people in their families, their communities, in
Yeah.
their societies change, and how change is how change happens and what's involved. And with change and transformation, there's for me there was also that potential for emancipation and liberation in at many levels, like an
Yeah.
individual level, at sort of at the community level, and so that was my initial sort of inspiration and my sort of initial sort of reasons and
Yeah.
interests I had when I decided to embark on that journey. So I was 19, 20 years old when I
Right. Okay.
first enrolled for my undergraduate
Mm.
course in psychology. Yeah.
Yeah. So a very, very fortunate meeting with that particular lecturer then. And
Yes.
was he sort of instrumental in part of your sort of developing your move across to changing your studies?
Yes. Yes. I did it. I went to do my research and look at different programs and where I could go and study. But he was supportive, sort of emotionally supportive, and sort of validating um, of my interests. And he sort of recognized that I wasn't very happy with studying business and
Business.
marketing.
Yeah.
Wasn't really what I was passionate about.
No. No.
Um, and then once I made the decision, once I communicated I was going to be dropping out and going to study psychology, yeah, it was very encouraging and supportive. So,
Excellent. That's great. That's wonderful. It's wonderful.
mm, mm.
So thinking about that whole journey there, what has the journey been like coming into your chosen profession?
Mm. It's been long.
Mm.
It's been quite long. It's been challenging. Um, at the same time, been very fruitful and very rewarding and very interesting as well. So when I completed my undergraduate studies in South Africa, um, yeah, I made the choice. I made the choice to come to London because I wanted to travel. I was like 21, 22 years old. Um, Young adult, wanted to travel,
Mm.
and said, okay, let me go to Europe. Went to Portugal first. That's where I have a lot of family members there.
Yeah.
In Portugal, work opportunities were not great.
Okay.
Just the way the economy is over there
Yeah.
with employment and wages. And so I said, okay, I'm gonna be moving to London. My older brother was 5 years older than me. He had been in London before, so
Okay.
he suggested, sort of advised, said, oh, you have a degree in the English language from South Africa. You know, you have a European Union passport in addition to the Angolan passport.
Mm.
So I have my dual citizenship. I said, okay, why not go to London? Yeah, but once here, yeah, there were other struggles in terms of
Sure.
finding work,
Yeah.
and then and then continuing to build on my previous qualifications. So I was being informed and told by different institutes and universities here that before I could go and do a master's and a doctorate in counseling and psychology, which would then enable me to practice as a
Yeah.
therapist,
Okay.
I needed to have some experience, some work experience in mental health and social care, like that
Yeah.
that kind of field. So that's what I did
Okay.
for a number of years. I worked as a mental health support worker in Newham
Okay. Right.
for Newham Social Services, and then 4 years after I was working with Newham Social Services, that's when I enrolled at University of East London to study counseling psychology, and and then I embarked on a 4-year program, part-time program, where then I was able to develop my therapeutic and counseling skills by doing different placements in different services. I did a placement with Mind in Tower Hamlets, did a
Okay.
placement in NHS services as well. Other volunteer organizations. There was Harmony in East London, in Newham, which was a Black-led organization as
Okay.
well. So that was my first ever placement.
Right.
So I had to get a total of 450 hours
Okay.
of counseling hours supervised. So I did all these placements, and so it was a 4-year part-time program, but it took me more than 4 years because eventually other things happened.
Yeah.
After 3 years, I was made, after 2 years doing the course, the program, the postgraduate program at UEL, I was made redundant from my job
Okay.
in Newham.
Mm.
Myself
Um,
and a few other colleagues. Mm.
okay. And how was that? Was that a very challenging moment?
Extremely.
Yeah.
Extremely. That was 2013. Yeah, 2013, 14. Yeah, was quite challenging because it was myself and other colleagues were made redundant. So I was without a permanent full-time job for the first time in
Yeah.
6 years or so.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that was quite challenging, and because I had to work and study in order, to afford my tuition fees and
Yeah.
sort of university, so that brought a bit of stress. And then in the same year, I became a dad in that
Okay.
same year. So
Wow. It's a
so
lot to
yeah,
work with. Yeah.
yeah. So that was quite tough, and then I decided to take a year off.
Right.
After completing 3 years, I decided to take a year off because it was too much going on,
Sure. Yeah.
and I had to take some time off. And then I came back for the 4th year, did another 2 placements, and was working for an agency. That's where I was getting my income from.
So that's quite interesting. You
Yeah.
sort of spoke about that, and you've taken that year out. So I suppose that
Mm.
could be reflected on as part of an element of sort of self-care, and building a different structure around to sort of keep yourself focused on meeting your goal.
Yes, yeah,
Oh,
self-care. It's I wasn't very yeah, at that time self-care wasn't something I was very aware of, but it was something quite organic. I just thought, this is being stressful, this is being demanding. I don't have a full-time sort of permanent job. I don't have sort of stable income. I have a child, and I'm doing a postgraduate program in
mm,
counseling psychology. I need to uh, take some time off.
mm,
So obviously I couldn't drop my job because I needed
mm.
the money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Mm,
my child was a baby, 1 year old, and
yeah,
I said, okay, I'm gonna give myself a break from the study, which was a difficult decision to make because
yeah,
I wanted to finish the training and the program at the
mm,
time it was scheduled to finish.
absolutely. Yeah. Mm,
So I had to be sort of mentally sort of flexible and agile in that sense. That, okay, I'm not going to finish now. I'm going to finish in a year or 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. I then got I was awarded my postgraduate diploma in counseling psychology in 2017.
Wow, that's brilliant. That's absolutely awesome.
Yeah,
Absolutely
thank you.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's great to be able to look back and reflect on that journey and just see how you had to manage it and make changes and adjustments to sort of see it through. That's brilliant.
Yes.
And would you say obviously you've spoken about a lot of challenges there, and the different sort of different routes you've had to sort of change your journey and path as you've gone along. So what would you say, being in the profession, you know, one as a man and two as a black man in this profession, do you think that sort of gave you any additional sort of challenges? And again, I thought about, you know, are there many people that look like you that are in the profession?
There are more now. There are more now as we speak. 2022.
Okay. Yeah.
There are more than I felt there was like 2011 when I started training.
Right.
And I think that the training aspect is important when we talk about gender and ethnicity or race.
Okay.
The training and the reason I say is I started the training into 2011, so that was when austerity was sort of beginning. All the government austerity policies, and the reason also I talk about austerity is austerity had quite an impact on public services and statutory services.
Yeah.
And that's how that's the context I placed my redundancy in. I was working for social services, local council.
Yeah.
After 2008 financial crisis, and then the election of a conservative government, 2010, we started getting the information from our directors, like there's going to be cuts in funding and there's going to be reduction in budgets, and that affected us and myself and my colleagues, and affected me personally in the sense of being made redundant. That stability and financial security was removed sort of for a number of years. So that was one difficulty, and it's been reported over the years in many ways that austerity, just as the pandemic, has had a disproportionate impact, a negative impact on ethnic minorities. And a lot of people who were working in social services, they were African, Caribbean, and Asian. I'm talking about support workers and social workers.
Yes.
And they were and this group was disproportionately negatively affected sort of by the pandemic and by the pandemic and by austerity before that. And when I was training, I was the only black man in the course.
Okay.
And I was, I think, one of four or five men in the course as well. So, and also I was perhaps there were a few of us who had to work and study. So people coming from a more sort of working class immigrant background.
Okay.
I remember talking to a Greek female colleague, and we were talking about how difficult it was to be studying, training, and having to work at the same time in order to in order to eat and pay rent and to afford university. So there's as a black man training, I was never called any names. I never felt discriminated in any way, but I could experience the difference in the classroom, and I could experience the difference in the psychology department as well, because there were there were no black lecturers. we had a black lecturer, was a visiting lecturer who spent a day with us. He came from somewhere else in England. But yes, there were, we didn't have sort of any black lecturers or research supervisors
No.
for the program. So although I never experienced anything personally, I could see systemically, I could see around me that my class was predominantly white, and the psychology department was predominantly white as well.
Mm.
Predominantly white, predominantly female, and predominantly middle class,
Yes.
middle upper class, and that means that we've had very different experiences of training. Some of my colleagues, and happy for them, they had all the time in the world and all the resources to excel in the course. I I must admit, I wish I had, in terms of the time and the money and the comfort I had. Perhaps the outcome could have been different in terms of when I got my qualification and the experience of getting it as well.
Yeah.
And having said that, that has been the experience of many other trainee therapists or trainee psychologists in the field, not just at UEL, but many other training institutes. People taking time off because it's very stressful managing the different demands of family life, work life, training. So it's so the experience, the experience of training as a black man has been quite challenging initially, and then more in the last few years, starting to work at Mind and attending training courses. Things have changed a little bit, but it's still a predominantly sort of white profession in a way. And when I say that is my supervisors, all supervisors I had, sorry, except maybe for one, they were all being white supervisors, and most of my colleagues as well, have been mostly white in terms of the supervision groups I've attended. So although, again, I was never felt like directly discriminated, and I was never told, anything discriminative or anything like that. But I was aware of the difference, and with time, I become sort of more aware of how that difference impacts on how my ability to connect to my colleagues and my ability to relate to a lot of my colleagues. And it's work in progress, ongoing.
Okay, that's very very interesting information there. I suppose one of the next questions would be around sort of any tips and advice that you want to share with anyone considering to go into the profession, but also just taking a quick step back to thinking about the ratios of your white colleagues. Was it more male than female, or more female than male in the field? And did you find that your engagement during your training was at any point not sort of your views accepted and considered and explored in the same light as your colleagues?
That's an interesting question, because there's the ethnic racial element, but there's also the very, perhaps connected, there's also the very individual and personal aspect of that, and by that I mean that sometimes it has been difficult for me, and I feel also when I'm attending training courses, for example, that sometimes it can be difficult for me to speak up, and that's been sort of changing more recently as I do my own work on myself and sort of
Yeah.
my, thinking about my history, my personal family history, my different challenges I've had, and sort of finding my voice as well. That is changing slightly. So I think it's a combination of my own personal and family history, and also the more wider structural systemic factors in terms of whose and what views and knowledge sort of become more predominant and accepted and sort of worthy of of exploration.
Sure.
So yeah, so it's difficult to answer that question. But I can recall two examples over this over these past years. One is when I was at university, and the tutor was a research tutor, and he was asking the class what different sort of research methods people were using, and for the course. And I said, I'm doing this course analysis, social constructionist discourse analysis. And the tutor looked at me and she said, "Are you? Good for you." And it's been nearly 10 years, and um, don't know if that was a compliment, an encouragement, or a dismissive
Yeah.
comment. I don't know. And at that time, in that moment, for different reasons and different factors, I wasn't ready to follow up on what the tutor had said. So I kept
Sure.
quiet.
Yeah.
I kept quiet, and perhaps I wouldn't have kept quiet if it was done today.
Yeah.
Said something, "What do you mean?"
Yeah.
Or
Sure.
something like that. But
Yeah.
at that time, that's what happened. Yeah, so that's what must be. So I can only assume and speculate now what may have been meant, because it's considered not the easiest research methods or to use. And then one of my research supervisors left university, and I wasn't told that they were leaving until after a few weeks. So there was,
Yeah.
there were those, those experiences I've had. And yeah, and after I started practicing and working, I've had the experience of talking about in a supervision setting, talking about a Black client, um, and how I was thinking about the client, um, using cognitive and behavioral therapy as a therapeutic modality, and how that client, as a Black person growing up in London, the kinds of beliefs they have developed over the years as
Yeah.
a young Black man. And beliefs is something that is very central to cognitive and behavioral therapy. You
Okay.
develop your beliefs in early life, and those beliefs will influence how you see yourself, how you see others, how you see the world. So I was working from that that framework with the client, and I tried once to share that in sort of in a group setting, and I personally didn't feel there was an interest from the group and from the person leading the group in being more curious or wanting to know more. So basically, I wanted to share with the group how a Black man growing up in London, a Black male growing up in London, what beliefs they may develop about themselves, given the context and
Sure.
the environment they are growing up, and what beliefs they may develop about themselves, about the world, and how that may then develop and contribute to the development of either depression or anxiety, and
Okay.
and I didn't feel sort of there was curiosity, and I didn't feel that discussion was facilitated in a way that could have been, could have been more, not only more interesting,
learning or sharing experience.
and I didn't feel validated in that
Yeah.
sense, and these are all reflections I've been having over the years. Sometimes they're difficult reflections because sometimes I beat myself up and I said, "Oh, why didn't I say something? Why didn't I challenge that tutor? Why didn't I challenge that supervisor? Why didn't I challenge that trainer?" And yes, and it's something that it's gradual, slow changes in terms of has to do with me personally, my personal and family history, and also my sort of status as a immigrant Black man from sort of a more working class background.
Yes.
It's yeah. So yes,
That's
that's
interesting. Yeah. Yeah, because that actually brings another sort of question to my mind. I thought about how you're received as a Black therapist when you're working with, well, both Black and white clients, and how the reception has been when you have engaged with those individuals from different ethnicities, different backgrounds, and whether that's something that's you know conversation that's engaged with those particular clients, and if you can think of any specific situations where that's been quite challenging, or something that springs to mind as a moment, an aha moment, or oh, that was very surprising to come from that particular client.
Yes, it's I think with the in the sort of, I can say, intimacy of the therapeutic relationship, there's there's always an opportunity to reflect on how the client may be experiencing the therapeutic space, the therapeutic session, and the therapeutic frame. There's always a space, an opportunity for that. So I felt that over the years I've been practicing as a therapist, there's I think I was quite well received by clients, and there's been clients I've worked with who have made comments like, for example, if a client was having problems finding work, say, for example, and they were quite upset and frustrated with that, there's been comments about from the client, something like, "Oh, I feel that people from this is a white client saying, I feel that people from ethnic minorities are given more advantages in the work and sort of job market." And so yeah, and that to me as a Black therapist, then the same way I would challenge any other assumptions or comments or help clients reflect about any comments or assumptions they would make. I've was able to have a conversation with the client about that in a respectful, non-judgmental, but had to be reflected because that was a comment that not only affected me personally as a Black man employed in an organization, but it was also a comment that could be seen like as an unhelpful assumption from the client, in the sense that they were sort of attributing their unemployment to ethnic minorities being offered more work instead of white people. And so we were able to consider many different aspects around I want the wider context, social, economic, political context, and which was necessary. So I built a good therapeutic relationship with that client, but sometimes those difficult conversations are needed. Clients sometimes ask you, where are you from,
Yeah.
and how long you've been here.
Yeah.
And I'm okay to answer that question, but I'm curious about where that question may be coming from. Is there is it curiosity? Is it a way to not talk about themselves and talk about me? Or
Yeah.
is it a concern that I'm able to offer a helpful professional service if I'm not from this country? If I'm not a white Englishman, am I able to offer something that is professional and competent? Um, it could be a variety of reasons,
Yeah.
and I'm happy to share that I'm from this country and I speak this language, and I'm happy to share that. But at the same time, I try not to make it about me. I try to make it about where the question may be coming from. So I have experienced hostility from clients, but it's in the therapeutic relationship that is open to be explored and to be thought about and reflected in an open, non-judgmental, sort of safe way.
Yeah.
And sometimes it may be about my background, my ethnic, racial, national background. Sometimes it might be about my gender as well.
Yeah.
Um, some male and female clients, sometimes they may feel they may not want to share a few things with a male therapist. And that's also open to be to be reflected, and it may lead to a change or a shift in attitudes or perceptions once we
Yeah.
have that exploration. And so I feel in general clients have received me well as a Black therapist, and I think um, as therapists we are in a position to reflect on assumptions and beliefs, which may include prejudice
Yeah.
and prejudice and stereotypical attitudes and perceptions that people may have in general, and that can be explored and can be reflected and challenged at times, but all in a safe, non-judgmental way, and that can be very helpful. And most of the times, 95% of the times, has been helpful. So I think I've been much better received by clients than by colleagues or classmates or supervisors or trainers at
Right.
times.
Okay.
And I think there's a power dynamic there as well.
Okay.
Uh, Clients sometimes ask the question, "Oh, where are you from? Or which language do you speak? Where's that accent from? Or I thought you were South American, or you African? Or I thought you were South American." So there's that, and that and
Sure.
that and those conversations are okay
Yeah.
to have clients ask that. It can be a reflection of many things, of their own personal and family histories, their own context. Um, but that's been okay. I never felt sort of intimidated or threatened by a client in that respect. But I have felt marginalized, excluded in training and professional contexts with with colleagues and with peers. I have felt that, and
Okay.
yeah. So I think I've been better received by clients than sometimes by my peers.
For your peers. Yeah. Okay. And has that affected your ability to sort of develop your role as a therapist, or have you found that you've needed to uh, constantly sort of have an assumption that you need to be working twice as hard or much harder, or has it had no impact at all?
No, it has. It has had an impact on in the sense of sometimes not contributing as much as I could or I would like to, and having to do extra work in terms of my own self-reflection, building my own building my own confidence, developing my own voice. But yeah, I felt that at times I could have contributed more, and that's I think that's a combination of at times feeling excluded, and also not having been confident enough, which there's many other factors involved in that as
Yeah,
well.
sure.
Yeah, so what I did 3 years ago, I think it was 3 years ago, I joined the BATN, the Black African and Asian Therapist Network, Therapy Network, and I think that really helped me to to develop my voice and my confidence, and to develop my sense of uh, this is my space too, and I have the right to be here as much as anyone else. I have I've done my training, I've done my placements, I've done my my unpaid placements,
Yeah,
over
sure.
the years. I've done
You've
all
done
of
the work.
these.
Yeah,
I've done the work, and having joined Batten was quite it was quite helpful because I got to attend workshops and and seminars about the experience of Black therapists in the UK, and I've got to know many other Black and Asian therapists, male and female,
yeah,
younger and older, and there was an effort and a focus on addressing the issues of class and race and ethnicity and gender in the therapeutic and sort of psychology profession. And it was good to hear from other Black therapists about their struggles and and their difficulties, and that really strengthened and contributed to a sense of belonging to a community, because it can be quite isolating when you feel like when you are the only Black man
yeah,
in a class, and there's no Black tutors or supervisors or lecturers in your psychology department that you're attending. So, but then I was able to meet Black trainers and Black therapists and Black supervisors and Black lecturers. So that was quite good. That was quite and it still is helping me a lot in the in developing and growing and asserting myself as a man, as a Black man, as a professional. It has helped a lot with with sort of developing my voice and my assertiveness, which is great.
cool. That sounds brilliant. So Batten sounds like a really key piece of the puzzle as well in your sort of development. Okay, so just I suppose just going down that last step now, I'm sure you'll be glad.
Mm.
um, do you have any tips or advice that you'd like to share about anyone considering going into the profession? Things that you've reflected on and thought, actually, I would have done that, or I could consider going that route, or had I known that in the past.
Mm. Do you mean people going in that profession, or Black people, Black men going in that profession, or
Yeah,
people in general?
I think so. I think it's Black
Mm.
men going into
Black.
into the profession. 100% Black men going into the profession.
Mm.
So from your unique perspective, um, yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's difficult for me as a therapist to give advice. That's something we don't do uh, often, not at all. To give advice. But I can say from my own experience, joining this profession, which starts when you enroll on a training course. It starts there because you're going to be doing placements, and you're going to have a lot of demands and requirements on you as a trainee, and then as a qualified professional. Um, I would say, if I knew, or if I could do it differently, I would have joined, for example, Batten then when I started training. I think
Okay.
that could have made a difference in terms of
Yeah.
my experience of belonging and understanding also who I was, what I was, and doing what I was doing. I think that could have provided me with more resources. And by resources, I mean the knowledge that a network of therapists is able to offer to individual members, the knowledge and the and the skills that you can get from attending a workshop, for example, but also the what I would say, like the spiritual and political sort of resources, which is part of that knowledge and that understanding.
Sure.
Recently, recently deceased American intellectual bell hooks did say the personal is political, and people a lot of times tell me, oh, we don't get into politics, this is political. For me personally, everything is political, from you know from how much you pay for your fees to how much money you have and where you buy your food, and how stressed out you are at the end of the day. Everything is political, and I think having those political, spiritual resources are important. And by that, for me personally, political and spiritual resources, to be able to have that, what I mean is, looking after yourself, because stress can be quite detrimental, and and reading, for me, reading works of different Black writers from Africa, from the Caribbean, from the US, from Britain, who talk about their experiences, or who talk about the experience of a community. I think that reading is helpful. So I guess my main advice, if I can call it advice, is to have the support, either from a family or from a community or from a professional body or network
Yeah.
that you can identify with. Um, I think having that support is extremely important, especially if we are in a context that is where we can noticeably see the difference in
Yeah.
who you are and who everyone else is. Um, I think having that support and having access to resources as well, are resources that are culturally appropriate as well. And having access to that, having the support, and being part of a community, of a network of people from a similar background, being part of that network is important. And I think depending on which institution people are training in, usually larger institutions like these big universities, they usually have sort of like a Black Students Association, for example.
Yeah.
I think that's or the student union.
Yeah.
Those kinds of bodies
Those
can
kind
be
of
quite
bodies. Yeah.
can
Okay.
be quite supportive for people, and it can be a space to talk about things that are usually not addressed, or not talked about. And and I think training is important, professional and personal development is important, but that will be much more difficult and at times impossible if we're not looking after ourselves and doing things that are important and nurturing and nourishing. And that can be the very individual things of having time for yourself, or going for a run, or
Mm.
whatever exercise people enjoy. Can be those very individual things, and can be self-care in terms of community self-care as well. Who can we reach out to? Um, who can we spend time with? Who can we talk to when we are stressed? Who do we trust to? Who do we trust to hear our frustrations and sometimes our difficulties? So that's I think for me that's the main sort of the main advice. And I think once a person makes that choice to embark in this profession, they are motivated, they are enthusiastic about it, and they want to make a difference. So I think anyone who wants to join the profession will have that in themselves. But to carry on year after year, I think, support, community, network, resources, spiritual, depending what spiritual means for different people, political resources to build that resilience, that robustness that will definitely be needed as the years go by.
All right. That's really valuable. That's really valuable. So that's some really key stuff there. So thank you for that reflection, and thank you for your time, Pedro. Really, really appreciate it. And of course, like you're doing some really valuable work, and it's totally appreciated. So thank you for that, and thank you for spending the time to share with us today your journey as a black man into therapy.
Thank you, Trevor. And it's thank you for giving me that opportunity. And it's it's interesting that it's some of the questions you've asked. It's these are questions that rarely been asked that I have not been asked before. And and I apologize if it comes out in a not a very coherent way, but it's sometimes it's new material that I'm not new material, but new in the sense that I'm sharing it with someone and I'm talking
Absolutely.
about it with someone.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
So processing it out loud for in a different environment and context.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's extremely value, and you've shared a lot of personal, emotional information here. So I really do appreciate that. And yeah, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
we will definitely speak again.
Sure.
And we'll be sharing this on our digital platform. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Trevor. Thank you for your time too. Thank you.
Yeah. So